Hello and welcome to another managerial special from the Lions Football Podcast. I'm Craig Savage, and with me as always is Mr. Daniel Cody. Today we are talking about Sheffield United. Slavisa Jokanovic has been sacked as manager and he's been replaced straight away by Paul Heckingbottom, who's been given a 4.5-year deal at the Blades. Let's get to Slavisa Jokanovic first. In the statement from Sheffield United, Stephen Bettis, the United's chief executive officer, said, disappointingly, after a slow start, we have not seen an improvement in results, performances, and we prefer to be in a better league position. A decision has been made, and now it's important that we look forward. So currently, the team is 16th in the championship. So Jokanovic's reign lasted only 6 months. Let's get initial thoughts. Good, bad, maybe? What the hell happened?
I'm really surprised. I don't know what it is. Firstly, before we get into the bones of it, what's going on this season with teams sacking a manager after winning a game? I have no idea what's going on. It's happening so often. Obviously, Norwich was the other week in the Premier League. Slavisa Jokanovic, the thing that gets me here, Craig, is that, let's be honest, the first thing we said in the manager special in the summer when he came in was he is famously a slow starter at every club. It's infamous. He starts slowly, his team gets better during the year, and he's got a proven track record of taking multiple teams to promotion. They started really slowly this year. They've been inconsistent, but they're only a few points off the playoffs. They're only a couple of wins away from getting right up in the mix again. Considering they had a team that were in such poor form last season in the Premier League, under Heckingbottom in the second half, they came down with a whimper. They weren't scoring goals, lots of strikers out of form, all of them probably bar Billy Sharp. You had to expect that it was going to take a little while for things to adapt. The transfer work got done a little bit later on in the window, and Jokanovic was building a side that, as you quite rightly mentioned in the summer, was probably within a club one of the biggest changes of tactical styles that we'll see because of the way Chris Wilder played up to the middle of last season, which was so unique. So I'm very surprised that it's happened this early. I'm surprised that when the board brought him in, they didn't think this is going to take more than 20 games to fix. And I'm equally surprised that they've blamed it on a lackluster start when I think probably more of it is related to what he wanted to do in January and what they don't want to do. Because that's exactly what happened with Chris Wilder last year and where it started to fall down. So that I'm shocked with. The Heckingbottom stuff I'm sure we'll get onto. The length of the contract has astounded me more than anything that's happened this season. But that'll come later, I'm sure.
Sheffield United, obviously, very low down the table compared to the other teams that got relegated last season. That was always going to be hard to start with anyway.
Yeah, and we've got to bear in mind that, like in the predictions the last few weeks, we've talked about West Brom not being great, and they're in third place. And we're saying Sheffield United need more time when they're in the bottom half. I can understand the irony of that, but it was more of a rebuild tactically, and it was more of a change in style, which I found surprising. And if you look at the stats behind the scenes, it's not actually as bad as it looks because Sheffield United's expected goals for to expected goals against is significantly better, but it reflects that strikers aren't particularly in form. I know we've seen a lot of silly individual errors for goals, and they've only actually scored 5 goals in the first half all season, which maybe suggests they're struggling to come out of the traps, but it was always going to be difficult. I think they were always the least prepared of the 3 clubs that came down, and for the most part of last season in the Premier League, they were a long way behind the other 2 teams that came down. So I don't think there can be a massive surprise in that. Of course, they'd expect to be higher up, but realistically, 2 wins in the next week and they're right back up in the playoff mix. So I think it's a little premature.
Do you feel like Jokanovic has fallen into the same trap as what Chris Wilder had, like post reset of the pandemic?
Yeah, potentially. I mean, more so off the pitch than on it for sure. But results have been poor off the pitch on the pitch for a long time. The momentum is going downwards, but Jokanovic had a big job to turn it around. I think more of this, as it comes out, will be from boardroom related stuff than result stuff. I know they haven't been great, but I still think that with time he would have turned it around. And let's be honest, he took his last 2 championship clubs to promotion. The thing that we were talking about before we started this episode is that his win rate at Sheffield United, even since he's been here in the summer with their poor start, is better than Paul Heckingbottom's at any club permanently or with Sheffield United last season. So he's still a manager who was overachieving compared to the man they've replaced him with, which I think that's the thing that gets me, Craig, is I wouldn't have been so annoyed about him going, as much as I think it's the wrong decision. if the replacement on a 4.5-year deal hadn't been what I deem to be so baffling. And I may well be proven wrong, but I don't think I will.
Well, we knew about it in the morning because we was doing our prediction show, which will come out later today. In the middle of that recording, we on Sky Sports News that Jokanovic was set to leave, and then we all had the thought of, oh, Neil Warnock's available, and we thought that little dream would come true. But Sheffield United backroom staff, the boardroom staff, they acted very, very quickly. They've got in Paul Heckingbottom, who was the under-23s manager. He was caretaker last season while we were in the Premier League, won 3 games, 4.5-year deal. He also brings in Jack Lester as head of youth development and Stuart McCall as an assistant manager. He obviously used to be a assistant manager under Neil Warnock in Sheffield United back in the mid-noughties. So let's break it down into a few little bits. 4.5-year deal. That is a crazy move.
I just don't get it, Craig. I mean, we've talked a lot in the manager specials, particularly in the summer post-pandemic, about people being given shorter deals or being given break clauses and things to give the club some protection if things don't go right. Now, I know that Heckingbottom's worked in the club. I know they had him as interim last year, but surely if he impressed them that much at that stage, they would have given him the job in the summer. That's what really baffles me here. If you're confident enough in him to give him a 4.5-year deal now, surely in the summer he was the right man for you. I just don't get that. I've mentioned it before. The thing that gets me the most is that his win rate in the Championship is less than 30%. His win rate with Sheffield United, albeit in the Premier League last season, was 27%. He had a very short and unsuccessful stint at Leeds, albeit they were in a bit of a difficult situation at the time. And I guess judging him on the longer stint with Barnsley, a 27% win rate over 83 games. There's nothing that inspires you there. I would genuinely be quite concerned if I was the supporters for Sheffield United here. The average managerial stint is about a year. You can't give him a 4.5-year deal. It's financial suicide for the business.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I'm just going to read back into the statement from the chairman. He said, "We look forward to embarking on a new era in Blades football with Paul at the helm. Paul possesses the personal leadership qualities and technical football skills the board feels are essential to successfully implement the board's strategic directives. He shares our values and our interest in player development, while we're also possessing the ambition and determination to get the most out of the current squad. We are convinced that Paul will play a leading role in improving all aspects of football operations." Now, reading that, and obviously considering he was there last season, and considering what's happened to Jokanovic and to Chris Wilder, do you feel, and this is going to be controversial, do you feel that Paul Heckingbottom is a yes man to the upper ups?
It's something that's got to be discussed, whether it's the case or not. He's certainly, given his position in the footballing world, his previous experience compared to Wilder and Jokanovic, his demands can't be as great, both financially from him initially, but also in terms of his stock, if he wants to ask for a player. I've got a feeling that this, I know he's been put in as the club's manager. I think it will be followed by a director of football type or a bit more boardroom influence in transfers. And I think essentially you are right, Craig, is that he's someone who will be easier to deal with for the boardroom and say no to than Jokanovic was or Wilder was. Hence, those ones have broken down. Ultimately, I know he had some good moments with Barnsley. He did take them up in the playoffs. They won the EFL trophy, but his record in the Championship is poor. And this is one of the most brutal leagues in the world. You can't afford a slow start again, as Jokanovic has proved. And the other question with a 4.5-year deal now is if Heckingbottom sits there for 3 months and they don't really progress, and let's say they're still, it's plausible, they could be between 15th, 16th in 3 months' time. Are they then going to have to sack him because he's not shown any progress from Jokanovic? I feel not so much for Heckingbottom, he can't turn down that deal, but Sheffield United, I think, have put themselves in a really tough position here. And whether he succeeds or not, of course, there's a chance he will, but a 4.5-year deal is a mad risk. I'm sorry, I can't get over it.
Do you feel, obviously, he was the under-23 manager, and considering they probably won't have any money, considering there's probably a parachute payment at Sheffield United, do you think they have to reinvest in the youth system?
Well, they're going to have to, I think, because as well, a lot of the star players that took them up and that were great in that first Premier League season, they are getting towards or the wrong side of 30. So You're not going to get a massive resale value on some of them. And the big money they have spent, thinking of the likes of McBurney, Sander Berger, even, I know he's talked about for other people, Rian Brewster, none of them have really come off as signings. So bar Berger, perhaps, I don't think they're going to be making a profit on anyone, might not even break even. So you're absolutely right. There's a lot of money that's gone in the wrong places. They're not going to have a massive budget. And maybe that is the view is, are we settled for the fact that now maybe we will be a championship club for a couple of years and we just want to put a real philosophy and project, I know I hate all those words in the club, but there's a risk with that you start to lose the supporters from the match day, you start to lose the ambition from the dressing room. And with that, then finances go downhill the other side of it. So I don't know. I think that is the way they're leaning towards, an easy yes man where they can save some money and build a long-term project. But I don't know that it's the right time for this because I still think they had a great chance at the playoffs this year.
So let's go on to the run of games. They start off against Bristol City and then Cardiff away and then QPR and then Fulham. The run up to Christmas. Not the best of starts to have.
No, it's certainly not the best of starts. Bristol City, I know they're not great at home. They're one of the best away teams in the league. Cardiff have had a little bit of a new manager bounce up to midweek and QPR and Fulham are flying. So it's not going to be easy by any means. And because of the timing of this, he's going to be under real pressure if he doesn't get results, because I know they're at the bottom of that mid-table pack, but if they lose all four and others pick up results, they could then be in a relegation scrap because that's what the championship's like. There's not a lot of points between anyone. So I think it's going to be very difficult. I really think that spell going into January is going to be crucial with Preston and Hull over the festive period, then Middlesbrough at home, Derby, Luton, Peterborough. Realistically, and then even Birmingham, that's their bread and butter. They're going to have a few signings coming in, you would imagine, and maybe having a few changes in the squad, some of the bigger earners perhaps going out. I can't see Sheffield United making a real push for the playoffs now. I'm less confident than I was under Jokanovic, but it's not the start you would want to pick as a championship manager, is it?
No, and you literally answered straight away where you think Sheffield United will be come the end of the season. So I'm going to change the question. All right, I'm going to make it to a two-parter then. You don't think Sheffield United will get anywhere near the playoffs this season, but how do you see Paul Heckingbottom doing? Do you think he'll last even to next year?
Well, I think he has to financially now, doesn't he? Unless he's got a break clause, he's on a small contract or an agreement, he goes back to another job. I don't see how he can't, because you're talking about a big investment to take someone out of a contract for 3.5, 4 years if that happens. But I don't see them making the playoffs this year. I see them being in that middle bunch. I don't see them progressing further from that. The big thing for me is the summer. I think Heckingbottom will get to the end of the season. Unless they're in a disastrous plight, that will happen. But the big thing is going to be the summer. If they start to lose big earners, you are reliant a lot on both your coaching of younger players and your recruitment from the lower leagues or in the smaller transfer pond. It's going to be interesting to see how it pans out. But my prediction, if I had to go for one, would be that Heckingbottom will go midway through next season, with Sheffield United probably in a similar place to where they are now in the table.
No, I totally agree. To be honest, do you know what? I haven't actually been impressed with any managerial appointments so far this season. Maybe Wilder actually to Middlesbrough. That's probably the only one I've actually been. Yeah, that's a good appointment. I've been very disappointed so far with these appointments, and this one I think that one with Paul Heckingbottom coming in sums up, I think, what Sheffield United are at the moment, considering the stories of what the owners are like and why Chris Wilder didn't get any money after the first Premier League season. So that him coming in doesn't surprise me. It's like the dream of Neil Warnock coming back, but I don't think Neil Warnock will have any of it with the owner, the chairman. So
it's the contract, though, isn't it? It's the contract. Let's be honest.
Yeah. So I totally agree. I think I don't see I definitely don't see Paul Heckingbottom lasting 4.5 years. Yeah, I have to agree. I don't see Sheffield United making the playoffs either. I feel like they're just gonna flatline for at least 2 seasons. I really do. It's just I don't see the ambition of what the Blades fans want. Because Sheffield United fans are fantastic. I'll give them that. I just don't see the ambition. I really don't, compared to a couple of years ago when they didn't expect to go up into the Premier League. So yeah, I'm worried for them. They could be an Ipswich for all I know. Look what happened to Ipswich. Look what happened to Sunderland. They could go back into League One before we know. So
let's hope.
Hope not, because as I said, they're a very good club, and I feel they could have done better for the appointment. It's cheap options, safe option to come out with the change the strategy of the club in November is ridiculous. If you're going to change the strategy, you do it. You do it in the summer. You change the whole strategy of the club in the summer. Don't do it in November when you can't. Also, one, you don't have a transfer window to either flog some players or get some youth players in. It's baffling for me. That's our thoughts on Paul Heckingbottom being the new manager of Sheffield United. Do you agree with us or disagree with us? Let us know in the comment section down there, and let us know your thoughts on the appointment. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the Honest Football Podcast, and you can follow us on Twitter at Honest Football 3. And we'll see you next time.